Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. And I'm going to pull up my camera here. Like I said, we're going to be working on identifying rational decimals. Well, there are some terms that we want to make sure that we have written down. Okay, some things, some new terms maybe to a lot of us that we have not seen before. They all relate to decimals and things that you're going to see on your assignment tonight in ALEKS. The first one is what's called a terminating decimal. Okay. Now, you might have heard the word terminate before. Does anybody know what terminate means? Like if your job gets terminated or something gets terminated? Does anybody know? Yeah. Stop. Right, it stops or it ends. So when we relate that a terminating decimal, it means that we have a clear end to our decimal. Okay, we can see it doesn't continue on forever. It doesn't repeat at all. It's just exactly, this is the point it stops. All right. So a decimal that stops is what's called a terminating decimal. Okay. And some examples of that you might see, like 1.15. It stops right there after the 5. You might have an example like 2.03. It stops right there after the 3. Could be negative. We could have negative 3.10. Stops right at the 0. Okay. So this is what's called a terminating decimal. All right. A repeating decimal. What do you think that's going to do? It's going to keep on going forever, but it's going to repeat. So it's not going to be just a mix of random digits. It's going to be the same digit. You see there, one or more digits repeating without end. So an example, you might see 0.333333. Sometimes this will be written as 0.33 with a line over top to symbolize that it's going to repeat. Okay. You might see multiple digits repeat. So like 0.45454545. This is the same thing as 0.45 with the line over top as well. It's repeating forever and ever. Those digits, that one single digit or those multiple digits are repeating forever and ever. Okay. Any questions so far? Anybody have any issues with what a terminating decimal is, decimal that stops, or a repeating decimal, a decimal that just repeats, has one digit that repeats or multiple digits that repeat? Any issues so far? We also have decimals that do not terminate or repeat. Okay, so it doesn't terminate, it doesn't repeat. In this case, an example might be just, a mix of several different digits. So like 1.15267831. And it just keeps going forever and ever with a long list of values. Okay. Pi, for example, like 3.14159, whatever it is, right? And you can keep on saying it forever and ever, is a non-terminating or repeating decimal. Okay. Another example, 0.457268344, and just keeps going on for forever, right? You can just list numbers and there's no end, there's no repeating, there's no pattern there, nothing. So these are different kinds of decimals that we could see. Terminating, they end, repeating, same digit or multiple digits repeat. Doesn't terminate or repeat. We don't see either of those things. It's just a random list of digits with no end. Yes.
So I think if it's like 1.52, but you can only 5252.
That would be a repeating decimal. So so here, I'll show it here. 1.52, 52, 52. So even though we have multiple digits, that 52 keeps showing up, right? 52, 52, 52. So that would be repeating. Okay. Good question. Any other questions so far? So one thing that we want to keep in mind is that not only do we have these categories of decimals, right? We have different kinds of decimals, but what does this tell us about maybe the way that they can be portrayed as fractions? Because remember that decimals and fractions pretty much work hand in hand. They're the same thing. Like 1/2 is a fraction is the same thing as 0.5 as a decimal. Okay. So what does this mean for us? Well, one note that we need to make, because it's going to help us on our assignment, it's going to help us understand the relationship here, is that if we have a terminating or repeating decimal, we can write these as fractions. So any terminating or repeating decimal, we can write as a fraction. 1.5 is a terminating decimal. The fraction form of that is 3/2. In fact, I'll put that as an example. So 1.5 is 3/2. 0.333 repeating is 1/3. Okay, and if you need to, use those two examples to help you out. Terminating or repeating, I can write it as a fraction. Whereas a non-terminating or non-repeating can't be written as a fraction. So if I just have a random list of digits there, no repetition, doesn't end, it continues on for forever, I can't write that as a fraction. But if I do have terminating or I do have repeating, I can write that as a fraction. Okay. Any questions about anything we have so far? We're just going to do one quick example because it's going to look similar to what you're going to have on your ALEKS assignment, and then we'll finish from there. Yes. A line over the numbers means it's repeating. So if it's repeating, right? Because I showed that up here. So like 0.33333, I can continue on for forever, or I can just write 0.33 and put the line over top. It's the same thing. Your example, 1.525252, you could write 1.52 with the line over top, and then that's the same thing. That means that it is repeating. Really good question, though. Any other questions? So we have our different kinds of decimals. Now we know the relationship it has with fractions. Let's go through, and I'm just going to put a couple examples up, and we're going to write whether or not I can write it as a fraction, and then what kind of decimal is it, okay? So the only example we're going to do here, actually, I'll do it on a separate page. So we got some room. If I write 0.666666, my first question to you is, what kind of decimal is that? Is it terminating? Is it repeating? Or is it neither terminating or repeating?
Repeating.
Repeating. And if it's repeating, going back to what I wrote before, if it's repeating, can I write it as a fraction or can I not write it as a fraction?
You can.
You can. Good. So fraction, I'll put a little check mark next to that. That's going to work for me. Okay. What about 0.5? Is that terminating, repeating, or neither? Terminating. Good. It ends, right? It stops right there. And if it's terminating, can I write that as a fraction or can I not write that as a fraction? You can, right? In fact, 0.5, as I said earlier, is the same thing as 1/2. So I can write it as a fraction and I'm good. What if I gave you 1.521830213 and it keeps going on forever? What kind of fraction is that? Or excuse me, what kind of decimal is that? Terminating, repeating, or neither? Neither. Nice job. And if it's neither terminating or repeating, can I write it as a fraction? No. So fraction, we'll say no. Put an X there. Questions that you'll see on your ALEKS assignment tonight will be very similar to this. It'll give you a list of different kinds of decimals, and it'll say, well, what kind of decimal is it? Is it terminating, repeating, or neither? And then if it is terminating or repeating, can I write it as a fraction? You would say yes. If it's neither, you would say no. Okay. Any questions about anything that we covered so far with this mini lesson here? So we have different kinds of fraction or decimals. Some can be written as fractions, some can't. And then here's some examples for you to work off of for your homework assignment as well. Everybody's good?